You're really manipulating energy a lot, and that's one of the things that the way I first became aware of you was you had the miraculous feat of getting Dave Tate in really good shape many years ago. But carb cycling, and but like I've heard people talk a little bit about carb cycling kind of before I saw some of your stuff, but I didn't see somebody talk about it in such detail. And then I also never heard of anybody talking about it at the way that you were talking about it, with the amount of carbohydrates for some of these guys. And I think for Dave Tate, it might have been maybe like 16.
Yeah, we go crazy. Yeah,
1,600 grams of carbs in like a given day.
Yeah,
that sounds absolutely crazy. How does some of that work?
Well, I'll use you as an example. The average adult male can store about 800 grams of glycogen. So you're a more muscular adult male, so you could probably easily store 1,000 grams of glycogen. So let's say just from a calorie standpoint, just to make easy numbers, let's say if we gave you 250 grams of protein, 500 grams of carbs, and no added fat for the day for 5 or 6 meals, that would be basically your BMR. You'd burn through that, a hypocaloric diet. You wouldn't burn more or store more. So we know you can eat that without gaining fat. Now let's put you on a diet. And so we're doing low carb days, medium carb days, and you're depleting, you're losing fat because you're in a calorie deficit, but you're also losing glycogen because your body's trying to pull from as many energy sources as it can. You start getting depleted in glycogen, and let's say we go a whole week and now you're 500 grams depleted in glycogen. Half your glycogen's depleted, which probably makes sense. If you've ever been really depleted, you know the difference between being glycogen loaded and depleted. So you're half glycogen depleted. That's 500 grams. Now, we know you can eat 250 grams of protein and 500 grams of carbs without storing anything. Now let's add 500 more grams of carbs to replace that glycogen. Now you're eating 1,000 grams of carbs that day, and you're storing 500 grams of those carbs, which is a lot. But because we're in a glycogen depleted state, you're going to store them preferentially as glycogen rather than fat. So we get all the benefits of that. Your thyroid upregulation, appetite suppression, the glycogen storage making you look bigger, but feel bigger and being stronger in the gym. Your NEAT's going to be higher the rest of the week, and you're going to have energy to power through the workouts where they're low carb. So for me, it's because you can't cheat thermodynamics, but this is a way you can't beat thermodynamics. This is a way to kind of cheat the system a little bit.
What's up, Power Project family? It's time to stop dressing like you're a fucking preschooler and step your game up by checking out Vuori clothing. Now, I'm not one to talk. I wear a fucking pink hat that has a dog on it, but at the end of the day, at least my shirt and shorts are popping. So head to Vuori because they have great stuff for your top and your bottom. Andrew, how can they get it?
Yes, you guys got to head over to vuori.com/power project. That's VUORI.com/power project, and you guys will automatically receive 20% off your order. Links to them down in the description as well as the podcast show notes. Let's get back to the podcast.
So as far as carb cycling is concerned, because what you mentioned is interesting, and a lot of people are probably like, oh, I can eat 800, 900 grams of carbs in a day, but what type of athlete should be implementing this, and how can they figure out, okay, like you mentioned, the amount of carbohydrates that they can then store?
Well, you can't know, you can guess, kind of like what we just did, and get pretty close to start. But it is interesting because it really varies by sport and athlete. So if I was a bodybuilder, how I utilize the high carb day would be different than if I was a power lifter. And I'll explain. So if I'm a bodybuilder, all I care about is building muscle. I like being strong, but that's not why. My performance in the gym is not what matters. It's the results of that performance in the gym. So I would have my high carb day maybe on a body part I'm trying to bring up. Say my back's weak. So I have my high carb day on the day I train back. And that sounds great. You think like, oh yeah, all those carbs, but your training's probably going to suffer because insulin's a mild central nervous system depressant.
It's a lot of food, yeah.
Yeah, you'll be bloated. It increases glomerular filtration rates. You're peeing more often, increases sodium retention. So you feel sluggish, you feel bloated, you're peeing all the time. You just, but the way insulin works, I hope I don't get sidetracked here. So I always pick every cell in your body has a receptor, an insulin receptor. And I picture it just like that because it's easy, then you picture insulin coming in, it binds to that receptor. What that does is it shifts some proteins around and it shuttles nutrients into the cell. So you get increased amino acid uptake, increased glycogen storage, all things that are anabolic, basically. So on that high carb day, your results of the back training, even though your back training might have been worse, is that all the nutrients necessary for hypertrophy are there in spades. Now, conversely, if you're a power lifter, you don't care how big your muscles are, really. It's nice to have muscle, but you need to move weight. So we're performance-based. So we don't want to do it on that day. Like if you have a heavy squat day, making that your high day, we don't want to be sluggish. We don't want to be bloated. We would have the high day the day before that. So you're bloated and sluggish the day before, then you go into your heavy workout where you need to perform and you have all that glycogen available. And so then people would say, well, but I want, that doesn't make sense. I want to have a good workout as a bodybuilder. Why wouldn't I have it the day before then? And I always use an analogy that I think is a little, it's kind of a reverse analogy, but I think it's easier to explain it. If I were to do cardio to burn fat, like say I went running and I'm doing it because I want to get leaner, I'm not going to be drinking Gatorade during the run. I'm not going to be eating gel packs because I want to burn fat during the run. And so, but if I was running a marathon to win the Boston Marathon, I would want all those things. So one of them is eating for performance. The other one is eating for the results of the exercise. And so you can do that for all sports. Like for MMA, we would do high days differently because you don't want to be bloated. You still want the high day before if you need to.
That's exactly what I was going to ask you. It's like, how do some of these other athletes that are on the hook for more movement? Because like when you go in the gym,
lower back pumps
it doesn't matter quite as much when you're lifting weights if you're a little bloated and things like that. But if you're rolling around doing jiu-jitsu or doing MMA or even a runner,
I think there's a really good case for that. Actually, if you remember, it's like old now, but when Brock fought what's the guy?
Oh yeah, Carwin, Shane.
Yeah,
Carwin.
Shane Carwin. Yeah, and Shane, if you looked at that, I remember we watched that, and he came out and he had edema in his lower legs, and they talked about how they were loading him and giving him IV bags, and he was too full, and so he came out great in the first round. But adrenaline dump. It was completely done the second. And remember those?
That must have sucked.
Remember those lower back pumps?
Oh yeah.
Imagine going into the second round and having your whole body with that feeling
against Brock Lesnar.
Yeah, yeah. And so like for an MMA, the high day would be slightly different. We still want to be glycogen loaded, but we don't want to be fluid loaded. So we'd go lower in carbohydrate. We'd still load higher, but it wouldn't be like shove 1,000 grams in because we don't want you all stiff and tight and. Yeah.
And maybe even potentially do it like the day before if you had if you had like an off day and you're a jiu-jitsu guy, maybe you would do it on the off day because it doesn't matter if you're sluggish and then the next day you still have that carb reserve. Does that work?
Yeah, because you're doing it for the performance. So it would be basically the same way with the power lifters. You do it the day before for performance.
Andrew's writing this shit down. Andrew's like, all right, 1,200 carbs tonight for jiu-jitsu tomorrow. Got it.
Sounds good to me, yeah.
So Power Project family, I hope you enjoyed this clip. We are on Discord and Reddit. We're trying to talk to you guys and build a community down there. So the links are in the bio. But remember, like, comment, subscribe, share this out with people so you can share the wealth of health. As cheesy as that fucking sounds. Peace.